One. There it is. Welcome to the 6th edition of the Adventure Society report on October 9th, 2014. I am Mr. Popper, Twitch TV streamer and quasi-internet celebrity. If I could live in any fictional universe, it would be... I'd probably say Sword Art Online.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty nice. I mean, there's a couple others that right up there, but I think top one would be the Sword Art Online universe. A lot of cool stuff's happening there.
Okay, well, here's a question about that, though.
Okay,
Would
question.
you want to be a live person in the virtual reality of Sword Art Online, or would you just like to be in Sword Art Online?
That's actually a tough split, like, if it'd be just like, could I just be playing Sword Art Online, trapped in that, or just in that universe? I don't know. I'd probably go with that universe because then both could happen. It could be playing Sword Art Online, and then like all the virtual MMOs that come after that. I'd be able to participate in all of that rather than just the Sword Art Online universe where like one death means real death. So probably just the universe
Yeah, I was going
itself.
to say, because obviously that's one of the problems with choosing Sword Art Online is that if you're a human in the virtual reality, there's a potential that you could die.
Yeah, whereas like the universe with like ALO and the extended stuff, well, like past that one game, there's a lot of other games that are part of the virtual MMO universes that are tied up within the story of Sword Art Online, the light novel, the Japanese light novel. That I think, yeah, more to the universe itself rather than just the game. So I
Cool.
think I'm joined today with.
I am Cold Queen. I am a mod in Sir Parker's channel. And, if I could be in any fictional universe. That's a tough one. There's probably a few I could choose. I think ultimately
You'd
either
probably
the
say Dragon Age.
no, I was actually going to say Kotar, but
Oh,
Dragon Age is a close second, just because I'm
KOTOR.
playing it right now. But Kotor, I think, is probably in terms of gaming, I think it's
Yeah.
definitely the top of the gaming universes that I've played in. Um,
Dragon Age
yeah,
is pretty
that's
grim and bleak though. Like think about this. If you were living in the Dragon Age universe, you're most likely dead. I mean, just all
not me,
likely
man.
dead.
Not me. I'm the fucking champion of
Oh,
Ferelden.
oh shit.
The hero
You're gonna
of
be
Kirkwall
champion. Oh shit. Oh
and
shit.
soon to be the Inquisitor, so, I'll be alright.
You're just hot stepping there, aren't you? You're
That's
just.
right.
Oh,
Saving
okay.
the world.
All the worlds.
One dragon at a time.
Okay. So,
Oh, we've had our first question and it's not about the podcast.
I know, right? Okay. So, we're live in Google Plus at Sir Proper and twitch.tv/Sir Proper, and the show will be posted on youtube.com/Sir Proper Gent. Apparently, Jack friggin' Black is having issues with his internet because his video won't load, and that makes me sad because Jack, you're awesome. Warlock is apparently needing help with a weekly heroic strike. That's a thing. Destiny, shout out to Destiny, because that's a game that I play a lot. I still have not gotten around to playing any
Really? I've not
Diablo.
heard of that game. What's that game like?
I have not
What? Sorry.
gotten to playing Diablo at all. 2.1 finally went live for Diablo on PlayStation, and I have yet to step foot in Diablo. Too busy, too busy playing Destiny. Can't be asked. Can't be asked. Okay, so today we're
Well,
talking
because
about.
now they've added, they've done.
Go ahead.
I was just saying they've done some updates to it. They've added like some raids and some new areas, haven't they?
Well, they haven't added the new raids in yet. We got a little sneak peeky at stuff like that, but we have a new event going, the Iron Banner, where there's a great clip here. I don't know if this will come through on Google Plus. I have a great little clip. Well, actually, you can check it out on YouTube, my YouTube channel. It was a little thing put together by Flendomo where it basically pointed out that all the with all their high level weapons are going to cause you untold amounts of pain. Quite hilarious. I enjoy the crap out of it, so I threw it up on the YouTube channel with his permission, of course. But yeah, it's pretty fantastic. Been enjoying it. I mean, like I don't do a ton of PvP, but it's definitely something that has gotten me there. Of course, I did just recently get the Vex Mythoclast, which is probably the most broken weapon in the game. So I'm saying there's a lot of noise in your background right now.
Really? I'm not even doing anything.
No, I'm thinking I'm hearing the street below you.
You can't, because I live in the suburbs. There's no street.
I don't know what I'm hearing.
It's definitely not me. I'm just sitting here with my laptop in my lap.
I don't know what it is. There's definitely
unless you can hear my hard drive.
Yeah, actually, I think that's what it is. That would definitely account for the sound.
That's weird. I've never heard it before.
Oh. It's definitely minimized. At least it... Yeah, because I'm watching on Hangouts, and I can see the noise. Pardon the technical difficulties.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, because I can't hear anything, really.
Huh. Well, I'll just have to talk more, because when I talk, you can't hear it. So we're talking today about reboots, remakes, and remasters. So we're gonna kind of quickly cover a wide variety of topics on games. We're gonna start today with reboots. Specifically, points on topic: Thief, Devil May Cry, and Tomb Raider. Let's start there. Then remakes, we're gonna pick up on a few others. I'm sure we'll drag into some other topics, but Bionic Commando, Contra, Strider, and why the hell haven't they made Final Fantasy VII yet? Lastly, remasters. We're talking Halo, Last of Us, Resident Evil, Silent Hill. I totally put Silent Evil because it's all the same, right? Not the same
Silent Hill, Resident Evil, all the same.
All the same game, really.
And why the hell have they not ported KOTOR yet?
Oh yeah, or a remaster. Let's remake KOTOR, remaster that. I don't care. Get that out. That's a fantastic game.
Do all three.
Yeah, all three.
All three.
Okay, so reboots. Let's go ahead and now I've played Devil May Cry. I have not played Thief nor Tomb Raider because I haven't had the money. Let's just be honest. I'm poor at times. I've played Devil May Cry. To be honest, gameplay-wise, I thought it was better. Story-wise, not so much. I've heard good things about both sides of the coin on Tomb Raider. I don't know. Do we think that reboots of series are good for the gaming industry? Let's start with that question there. What's your thoughts, Cola?
I think it depends. I mean, it's like, when they reboot a film, it can sometimes be a bit controversial because you sort of think, well, they spent all this time, like Batman or Spider-Man or pretty much any of the superhero films. They spend a lot of years and a lot of money and a lot of time making sort of these epic series, and then after the last one, a couple of years later, they're suddenly starting over with a new origin story, with a new actor or a new look or something, and you sort of wonder why do they need to keep doing that? With games, I see the point. I mean, you could try and port games, but as consoles, particularly consoles, not well, even with PCs, as technology advances, it gets harder and harder to take something that's graphically old and bring it up to speed or up to spec to use on a new console or newer PCs. So remaking them is probably the best option. But if you're going to remake a game, why not just reboot it? You can start from scratch with a whole new way of gameplay, a whole new character creation, a whole new storyline, a whole new origin. So sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. I'm not sure. Like with Thief, I haven't played the new one. I'm a little bit like I want to play it, but I think there's something that's keeping me from playing it, and that's that I really loved the original series, and particularly number 3, which was the one that was on Xbox for me. And the idea that they've changed some of the story now and rebooted it, essentially, even though it's the same character, the same kind of origin story.
They've gone about it a different way. I've definitely touched on.
Yeah.
I've seen them touch on that before. And let's really point out the fact that one of the reasons I think reboots are valid is that with consoles, like early consoles like the NES, Atari 2600, that's really early on. But they were mechanically locked, like hardware-wise, they couldn't do a lot, as far as mechanics and game-wise and whatnot. And so what you really ended up having was a game that they did with what they could.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like that a reboot isn't necessarily a bad thing, because they do it in comic books too. They find themselves kind of at the end of a storyline. Let's just be frank with each other. Spider-Man needed a reboot for that movie franchise.
Yeah.
Holy
well,
shit.
and
I couldn't handle any more of emo Tobey Maguire. It needed to stop.
I agree. I like the Amazing Spider-Man series much more than I liked the Tobey Maguire series. And I mean the same thing with Batman. Initially when the first Batman movie came out in 1989, everyone went apeshit over it.
Hey, Michael Keaton made a fantastic Batman. I don't know what.
But the thing is,
George Clooney, really?
They still went cheesy with it at times, cartoonish at times.
Tim Burton, anyone?
They did.
What the hell were they thinking?
They did a lot of throwbacks to the TV series, so it didn't have that Dark Knight feel. And the Dark Knight versions, they're much more grim, they're gritty, they're more realistic, like the places. So I did enjoy those more. But yeah, so I mean, reboots are not necessarily a bad thing, and like we all know, Hulk came out. I forget, like in the early 2000s, and then like a year later, they basically rebooted it. And I'm not saying it was a bad thing.
Yeah. Now I want to give
with games. Sorry, with games, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure why though. With games, you would reboot them and not just make a new. I don't know, like a sequel.
A new intellectual.
Why not?
But see, you run into the problem with ties. Like as soon as you make a prequel or a sequel, it has to respect the canon, and you have a whole army of nerds out there that are willing to argue with you if you do it wrong. which I think also makes more sense for a reboot. And I think Stanley kind of nailed it with the whole. He's like, when they make a movie, it's its own thing. The writers have their own creative direction because you can't really be tied to the past in a lot of ways, or you're just fighting uphill. Now, I want to acknowledge Crimson Warlock is in the
Yeah.
channel. He's also part of Guardian One Network, and they do a weekly podcast. I believe it's just for the most part focused on Destiny, but he brings up a good point. He says he feels that a lot of the magic of the original is lost with the remake because of how much gamers have changed over the years, and that's another angle, that you have to deal with. Gamers have a nostalgia moment that's all tied around, um, the feelings of a game, and like, yeah, I can't count the number of gamers that I've heard over the years that like, give me a Final Fantasy remake, shut up, take my money, kind of thing. But yeah, the feels would not necessarily be there. There'd be loud. That is super
Yeah.
loud. Is
What?
it just sounded like a airplane was going overhead. I think you get too close to your hard drive or something. I don't know.
I haven't moved. I can hear that my hard drive is whirring, but
I don't know. Like,
I kept
is your
hearing that
mic
loud.
line attached to your computer directly? Is that it?
No, my mic is up on the top of the laptop with the camera.
Oh, that's probably what it is. It's reverberation. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, it's just weird that like you never heard it before.
Well, I think I've heard it quieter, but not quite as loud. I don't know. Is your laptop dying?
I hope not. It better not be.
Okay.
I've only had it for
Yeah,
like
I
2
mean,
years.
reboots are nice, and the thing is, I would almost say like reboots are the better end of a remake, but I think they both have their places, and I think if done well, they're valid. They're valid additions to the mediums.
Yeah.
And
I
let me bring up remakes. We'll move right into remakes here because there's a long stint of that. So with remakes, we have Bionic Commando. I've played that. I actually played the remastered edition and the remake of Bionic Commando. They did a remake of Contra, which like no one cared about. The remake of Strider, and of course, why won't they remake Final Fantasy VII? That's a question. Why won't Square remake Final Fantasy VII? So what is your ideas on remakes versus reboots though?
I think, well, okay, so this is where we get into the territory of this game was out, long time ago, and it's not possible to port it, so we have to remake it. One, because graphics are so much better, we can do new things with it. It doesn't have to be a platform anymore. We can make it 3D. In that sense, I think remakes are good because then you can get to play games that either you loved when you were younger, or thunder, or played as a kid, whatever. Or you can play games that you always heard about but never got to play because you never had that particular console or whatever it was on. So remakes, I think, sit in a slightly different place to reboots. Now, for hardcore fans of a particular game that was out at a particular time, it was only available on a particular console, they may, do the fanboy thing and just hate it because they don't want their memories to change. But for people who never got to play that game or don't remember it in the same way, getting to play it now on newer technology is a great thing. So I think there's a difference there between a remake and a reboot, because a remake just implies that they're taking all the things that make that game great and just updating it to fit the current technology, versus a reboot, which is all about changing quite a lot of what the game was.
Now let's take some of your best loved games. Now, would you like to see a remake, like an actual remake or a reboot of KOTOR? Like, do you have a preference there?
Well, I mean, I love the story of KOTOR, so I'd be fine if they just remade it so that you could play it on current gen or next gen. Because obviously the graphics definitely need to be remastered. They could probably add more areas to it to make it longer. I don't think the story needs to be changed at all. If they
Now,
rebooted it,
when you're talking story, are you talking about like the major arc? What about all the side details and all of that stuff? Couldn't that be
yeah, that's. I
changed
mean,
without
like,
really any significant
well, you
impact?
could. You could probably add different side quests. You could probably add new characters and even companion characters to it to make it richer. That's what I'm saying. You could add more areas to it to give it a fuller feeling, so that it, even though you couldn't make it necessarily open world, you could certainly fill out the universe a bit more. So instead of just having, like, I think it's 5 planets that you can visit, have 6 or 7. I mean, when it was out for PC, there was a downloadable um, extra area. It was like a space station that you could play on, and they released it. You couldn't do it. It was on Xbox. So no, it was Xbox 360. If you played the Xbox version on Xbox 360, you could then download that special area. But it was heavily bugged, and in fact, for me, it's never worked.
Hmm.
So I've never been able to play that area on my 360. And that's kind of a bummer. So things like that, you could add those things that people on PC got. So I mean, the difference between a console game and a PC game, especially in years past, is that PC games can be modded by the community. So people
Yeah.
come and they add lots of content, or they add better graphics, or just things like better weapons or better clothes, or
Let's just give a
nicer
shout
hair.
out to the Morrowind series, Elder Scrolls,
Yeah.
for modding community. Holy crap! I think each of those games had almost a 10-year lifespan just because of the modding community.
Well, and that's like KOTOR, like, was heavily modded by the community, and KOTOR 2. I mean, amazing mods. And I played them on PC with the mods, and lots of
Mm.
things. They added new characters in, all kinds of stuff. So you could take all of that and put that in a kind of remastered version. You wouldn't have to
Hmm.
reboot it
Yeah.
necessarily. You just remake it with all this great extra content that's already out there. Just kind of fix it up a bit. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I think, in some ways, remakes, as we're moving into remasters, I think in a lot of times, instead of just simply remastering a game, a remake would be a better option. Like, I would rather see a remake of KOTOR than a remaster of KOTOR. Because,
Yeah,
to be honest, there was a lot of polish missing off of KOTOR. As much as I love the game, I love
yeah,
KOTOR, KOTOR 2, both phenomenal games. Uh, even talking about Mass Effect, there's plenty of bugginess in um, the Mass Effect series, and yeah, a remaster would be nice, but I almost think you have to, like, if you're gonna put that much time into it to have a game company make more money on it, I almost think that they would need to put that little bit extra and do it as a remake. You know, freshen up the mechanics. Look at, hey, what's the core engagement? How can we improve on this? This is what we did with the story. Do we want to build on these topics that we never touched on? And
yeah,
there's been some criticism for remasters, and I think some of it's valid. At the same time, like, for instance, for me, The Last of Us, I had never had a chance to play that. To be honest, after playing the remaster, I don't really know what they could have done to improve it. I mean, yes, giving me the DLC for free was a nice little touch, but yeah, and like I never had a chance to play it because it happened to be that like I was between consoles at that point. My PS3 had died. I was like, I'd have to wait weeks to get that repaired, or I could be, playing games on my PC, and I just never got to play The Last of Us. And I honestly missed out a good chunk on the Halo series. And say if I had only been PS3 and I decided to go Xbox One, I would really want to play through all that story. So I can kind of see the inherent benefit, but it's kind of like where do you draw the line saying a remaster is valid versus when should it be a remake instead?
Right.
I think that's the big dividing line at that point.
Well, I thought I'd sent you a link on Twitter for an article.
I did. I
Um,
read that
oh,
one,
you
the
saw that? Okay.
remaster. Yeah,
Um,
I've actually read the
and
one
that
before that
guy,
as well.
yeah. I mean, the guy had a point in that. So he's talking about The Last of Us remaster and why
Hmm.
bother. And he's got a point. If you have the previous consoles, or if you had a PS3 and you played The Last of Us, and then you got a PS4, the only advantage is that you could also replay the Last of Us on your PS4. But the advantage is really for the people who have not had the previous console with the game, the previous unmastered, version of the game.
Right.
So, like, if I got a PS4 now, I could play The Last of Us because I can't play The Last of Us on an Xbox.
Hmm.
Um, so it's sort of like I understood his point in that, for him, because he had the previous generation and he had already played The Last of Us, he didn't understand why Sony was putting so much into this one game,
Well,
which has
especially
already
in
been
in
played
lieu
by a lot of
of
people.
in lieu of a next generation game, because
Yeah, in
his
lieu of a
his
new game.
his biggest argument was that remasters have their place, but not when they're taking the place of new content on a new console, where he's saying there should be either fresh IPs or fresh games being made rather than just dumping out content like, oh, here's the greatest hits of the last, hurrah of the console. Go ahead and throw those out on the PS4. But arguably, I would say like The Last of Us remastered for someone like me who didn't have a chance to play it.
Yeah.
The Last of Us was some of the best content that you could have started with because I mean you had a seasoned game to put out versus like some like Knack. I'm gonna pick on Knack. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Knack, but from what I saw, I couldn't care less about it. Like there was nothing that really drew me into Knack as a fresh IP. And I mean it's already under the bus. It's a great assist, yes, but like there's a price drop on that and more people would rather just get the free games through PlayStation Plus than be bothered with picking up Knack.
Well, and I came to your channel because you were playing The Last of Us,
Yeah.
um, remastered the PS4. And the thing is, like, from a Twitch perspective, when remasters come out, everyone starts streaming them.
Yeah.
And this is a good thing for streamers because they have games to stream that people are interested in seeing. Because, like, I had heard about The Last of Us, but I didn't have a PS. So, it's not something I ever really thought about. And then, because I've been sort of upping my Twitch watching a lot more in the last, like, 6 months, I was suddenly thinking, oh, there's certain games I'd love to see because I won't be able to play it because I'm not planning to have a PS4 anytime soon. And then all of a sudden, boom, The Last of Us remasters out, everyone's streaming it, and I'm looking around going, oh, look at all these great streams I can watch The Last of Us to see this game that I'm not going to be able to play myself. And for me, that's the big advantage of Twitch is I get to see games that
Mm.
I'm not going to play right away or that I may never play. And that's why I like to watch streams for that reason, besides watching games that, I already know and love.
Right.
So I think remasters for streamers are actually a really good thing. And for the gaming industry are a good thing because they bring a new audience to those games. So if you can port a game into a new system, into the new technology, you're going to create a new audience for that game, as
I
well as retain the audience that already loves it.
I think there's a time and place for remasters uh, versus remakes, and I really think it's a IP by IP thing, and it's not fair to. And this is the problem I had with the guy's first article. I mean, I think he did a better job of addressing kind of the whole topic in his second one, but the first one he was just like, remasters are a bad thing. It's a naked money grab. This is the gaming industry just out for your money. And yeah, maybe there's a little bit out of it, but like I can't count the number of people, and like I would hit 100 plus cycle, and I know people weren't like 100 people weren't sitting there watching me for 2 hours. I mean, there was obviously churn there, but those are people that many times would come in and like, hey, is remastered any good? I never played the first. Is it worth for me to pick up? And
Yeah.
someone like me who has never had the chance to play the PS3, I'm like, well, if you've never played the PS3 version, this is a fantastic game. I highly recommend it. I think it's worth it. But it just should it have been a complete remake? I don't think so. I don't think it's. I don't think that's would have been a viable option. Whereas a remaster, I don't think sucked up as much resource as a full remake would have. I mean, retooling that entire game, I don't know what they would have necessarily gained for all the time and effort they would have put into it. Whereas a remaster in that case makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. When we're saying remaster, I mean, it's essentially a port of a game from one system to the next system
Yeah.
so that people can play the game on the new console. And I kind of see his point, but I mean, as he pointed out in the article, he seemed to be quite alone in this opinion,
Yeah.
whereas most people were quite happy with remasters. And yeah, you could say it's a naked money grab by the gaming industry, and maybe it is. But the fact of the matter is that they've discovered it works because people want it.
Right. Well, I mean,
And
look,
they wouldn't do it if it wasn't for the fact that there was some kind of demand for it.
right. Well, look at Diablo 3 and GTA 5. Those games, in some ways, like it makes sense to have them basically retooled and put out because that's the content people want to be playing now. And in some ways, it allows the gaming industry to put those big triple A titles out right at the beginning of a life cycle of a console because I mean you've put all the time, money, sync, and everything into that game. You can immediately get a triple A game up and running on your new console. That seems like a pretty big advantage. I mean, when you get down to it, I don't see how that isn't a viable option and why they wouldn't do that because now if they were just remastering every POS game that came out, I would be like, this is a stupid thing and it needs to stop. But like Strider, they did a remake slash remastering of that in some ways because the gameplay really didn't change a ton and it's just a spiffy shiny upgrade. So I say it somewhere crosses the line at that point. But that was something they could put out fairly quickly. I don't think that took nearly as much time as other games, but it's something small they could put out, throw it up on PS Plus. But there's a lot of games that I just wouldn't care to see from previous gen be pushed out on PS4. I just, you know. And here's another thing to think about, Cole. I just thought about this. Some of these games that are getting remastered have been on the PC, and they were already designed for x86 architecture. So knocking those out onto the new consoles with x86 architecture just optimized for those console specs, I don't see why they wouldn't do that. That's a really smart idea. Little to no programming effort. Because, I mean, the PC industry always has had to push the bleeding edge of graphics for the most part when they're doing big titles. You know?
Well, and one of the things between being a console gamer or a PC gamer, I mean, I like to play on a console. It's just my preferred
Right.
choice. But it's also meant that, over the years, I've had to sacrifice being able to play certain games or
Hmm.
being able to have certain content in games because I'm on the console versus the PC. But now they're kind of closing that gap between what's available on a PC and what's available on consoles, and I really appreciate that. So I'm all for like remastering stuff so that people can get to play games they never would get to play before.
Yeah, and um I would say, I apologize to anyone who's not technologically savvy with consoles and operating systems. The x86 architecture is the current generation of kind of PC architecture. I believe both Mac and Windows use an x86 architecture. Um, but basically, that's what PC gaming has been designed for, as far as the system of process. And this is the first time gaming consoles has ever used the same architecture, like for design and programming and how things are processed, as PC has. And so this is in a lot of ways going to make porting games easier. A game developed on the PC can much more quickly be ported to a console because same architecture. You're going to see a much slower update life, but that's the reason why Warframe can now come to both PS4 and Xbox One. It's just on the x86 architecture. Boom, it's slated out. There's few optimization tweaks, but for the most part, that seems like a really smart idea, at least for the argument for remasters. Like
Mm.
game come out like say 3 years ago. I believe we've been using x86 for at least 3 years. There's a lot of games that came out on PC that could be easily ported now to PS4 and Xbox, and I don't think that's a stupid idea at all. I think it's a fantastic idea.
No, no, and I think that's why I think that argument right there is what the person who wrote the article was not thinking about. Um, and that's really your argument there is the real reason to do it,
Yeah,
versus whether he'd played the game before on on a previous console.
yeah, because
Um,
he seemed to get hung up
there
on the.
will there will be people like him, but the
Yeah,
fact is the majority of people there won't be that problem with.
yeah. One of the things that he kind of got hung up on, which I think was a real misstep on his part as a gaming journalist, is that just because he could have bought it for the 360 or the PS3, somehow it diminished its validity on a new console, especially if it was bringing the gaming experience at that level. Like, remaster or not, I would say The Last of Us is a PS4 experience. Like, it was high def. The gaming was tight. The controls. That's what I expected out of next gen. I'm like, wow, this came out of last gen. This is, oh crap, this is a game. You know,
Yeah. Well, and
but
that's what you'd expect. I would expect like a 360 version of the game and an Xbox One version of the game not to be exactly the same. I expect there to be, a difference in graphics, in the way the gameplay feels. All the elements of the game will be the same, like the characters, the story, the strategy, the buttons, but there should be a different feel to it. And
yeah.
that's where you have to make the choice. Am I going to keep buying games for my 360, or am I going to get a next gen so I can have that different experience?
I mean, if they put out today a remaster of KOTOR onto the PS4, Xbox One, whatever, and I mean they fixed the glaring bugs, right? They brought the graphics online. Even if they kept the rough architecture the same, I would say
Yeah.
that would be a valid thing to do. Whereas,
It would be a total reason to buy a next gen console.
yeah, because the thing is
Like
a
right
lot of
there,
people,
I'd be first in line.
right?
Here's my
A
money.
lot of,
I don't care which one,
yeah.
just give
Shut up,
me.
shut up, take my money. Um, But I think that's a silly argument to make when it's like just because I could have bought it, there's a lot of people that didn't. And there's a whole new age of gamers that like say when I was 20 something, right? I could only get what I could afford at the time. I didn't get around to every game, but I'm a different gamer now and I have access to those. That would be fantastic. Now, if Microsoft was ever smart and decided to port the entire Halo series over to the PlayStation 4, they'd make some money. I'm just going to point it out. There's a lot of people on the PS4 that want to play the Halo series. I just haven't been able to afford the console, and they're not going to move me into buying another console at this point because,
Yeah.
first off, A, I don't have that kind of disposable income, and B, they can at least make money off the franchise and the software. It's silly not to, in my opinion.
Well,
You
and
know?
you'll always there will be people who can afford to and do have both consoles and
Yeah,
buy different
yeah,
games for different consoles. Um, but I think what I see in the gaming industry is actually so in the past we've been more divided between PS and Xbox. There are a lot more. There are games on Xbox you could never play on PS, and there are games on PS you could never play on Xbox. And over the last 3 or 4 years, that's been changing
yeah,
with remasters and remakes and reboots. I mean, a lot of these reboots are on all the consoles.
yeah.
And that's telling you something that the gaming industry understands there's a rift that needs to be fixed so that people. I mean, it's not necessarily good for Sony or Microsoft because it means there's less divisive camps. So people may switch sides at some point. Like I'm considering buying getting a PS4 if I get a next gen instead of an Xbox One. But it means that as a gamer, I get to choose games instead of consoles.
Yeah.
So I'm given the option to play a game on my 360 that used to only be a PS game, and now so what you're saying with GTA 5, so now they're bringing that to PS4. Same thing with Minecraft, they brought it to PS4.
And
And these are games that you didn't used to be able to play on PS.
that's an interesting point right there. The Minecraft. Microsoft. Microsoft bought Minecraft,
Yeah,
and
talked
there's
about in the last
no.
podcast, by the way.
Yeah, we did. We did touch on that on the last podcast. But the fact of the matter is, it's not. There's no official statement so far from Microsoft saying, "Hey, we're pulling the plug on the PlayStation version." So, I
Well,
mean,
we
that
discussed it's silly for them to do that.
it would,
Why would
but
you do
that
that?
brings up a new possibility. If Microsoft is making money off of Sony, are we really seeing that much of a divide anymore? Could we someday see, Sony develop the hardware because I love you Xbox and all of that. There's some great games out there, but if we're gonna make a joint console ever, let Sony handle the hardware. Just
Yeah.
saying. Um, let
I agree.
Microsoft run the network and the gaming architecture. That's fine because the ability to get stuff through um, certification is much faster on the Xbox than it is PlayStation 4. And I think we could be sooner than later at an advent. And I think, there's another thing that's been definitely kicking both Sony and Microsoft in the collective rear, and that's Steam.
Yeah.
If you're a PC gamer, you most likely know Steam, and you most likely know that it's almost stupid to pirate games anymore because you'll eventually be able to get them on Steam for $5 or less. Like I bought the entire Thief series for I think like $7 at one point. Um, I regularly see Thief going on sale for almost $10 now. It's down that low on Steam sales. So I
Well,
mean,
it's not even Steam. If you look at Origin, um,
yeah, they've
they
been doing
just gave
sales too.
away
Yeah, yeah,
Dragon Age for free to all Origin users, which is a PC. So,
yeah.
I mean, seriously. It's a thing now where it's much easier to get games on the cheap. So you can
Yeah.
get them on Steam very cheap. You can get them from the game companies on your PC very cheap. You can get them for free on consoles now. So like
Yeah.
Xbox Live, if you have a gold membership, they give you games
And
like every month.
PS4.
And
Yeah. PS
sometimes they're
Plus.
small games, and sometimes they're big games. And the same thing on PS Plus. They're starting to do that as well, aren't they?
Mhm. Well, they've been doing that since this. I'd say this kind of next generation PS Plus. They've been giving away a lot more full games. Like before, when PS Plus started, they were giving away games, but there was a lot smaller games that they were giving away. But now with this more digital distribution, we're seeing much larger games being released now in the pipeline, so to speak, for free games. So
Yeah. And part of that is because game companies and the console companies realize that they need to add value. So they're charging you a monthly fee to use their live whatever. Game companies are charging like, £60 or $100, whatever it is, for
it's
a
$60 a
brand.
year for a PlayStation Plus.
I mean, but I mean for like a brand new game when it,
Oh yeah,
on
yeah.
pre-order, it's like $100 or like £60 or whatever. And so they're, and people are like, we've had, recession for a long time, and even though economies might be recovering, especially with younger gamers, they don't have a lot of money, but even older gamers like us, I
Hmm.
have a full-time job, but that doesn't mean I can go and buy any game the minute it comes out. That's
It's still a
still an
luxury.
expense. It is, and that's why I don't always play games when they first come out, because it's like an investment for me.
Yeah.
I have to know that when I spend £60 on a game, that it's really going to be worth £60. I
Well,
mean,
that
that's
was
a lot of money to me.
that was the same thing for me in Destiny. Like I haven't bought a full price game in ages, and Destiny was the first game in ages that I have decided to decide. This is a game that I'm going to get.
Yeah.
Uh, by the way,
Right.
you totally mentioned Dragon Age being given away. I'm like, wait, I didn't know Origin gave away Dragon Age, so now
So
I
now
had
you
to go.
got it.
I have to go do that right now.
You better go do that.
I'm like, I love Dragon Age Origin. What are you doing to me, Cola? Thanks for the update,
Dragon
though.
Age, Dragon Age. It's because
Uh,
I'm deep in the middle of it, so I'm even watching people play it on Twitch.
oh, geez, man, 15 gigs. Wow,
Yeah,
15 gigs.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm now like now games though I'm used to like 40 gigs. Like 40 gigs is pretty standard for a lot of games anymore. So yeah. Um,
Right. So what is our wrap up? What is our verdict?
what is our verdict? I think that there is a serious there's a serious problem with the naked money grab that can happen. But at this point in time, I would say there's validity to remasters, reboots, and remakes. I think they have their different niches. I would say like the remake of Bionic Commando, which I actually thought was fun. I think that they kind of missed out on a lot of things that they could have done with it, and the
Hmm.
gameplay ended up feeling a little wonky. They kind of nailed the whole grappling mechanic. I thought that worked out well, although it's Spider-Man stupid, where it's like I'm grappling onto shit I can't see kind of thing. Although they require you to grapple onto more specific things than not. Just there's times where you're like, what the hell am I grappling onto again? Anyone? Um, and Spider-Man's terrible about that. Every Spider-Man game has been terrible about that.
Is it?
Um,
Never played
yeah,
Spider-Man.
they just like magic things directly above you that you're somehow web slinging to. Like,
Mm.
I don't understand it, but I think remakes of games can be really good. I think reboots of franchises have their place, especially when like you get so deep into a series, Like Tomb Raider, man, they drove that shit into the ground, and I think a reboot in a lot of ways helped breathe fresh life into the IP. If the IP is worth saving, I think a reboot is viable. If if a game, a single game, is worth um, revamping, then the remake. And if the game is so solid but it's a bit old, then I think a remaster is in order. I think they each have their own viable options. Outside of those categories, I would question what it is the game industry is doing.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway, personally.
I think I pretty much agree with you. Um, One of the points that the guy made in the article we were talking about earlier was that what he saw was an investment in all this remastering, and not a lot of investment in new IP. And I kind of get that. There have been. It's not like there's no new games. I mean, obviously, Destiny is a new
Totally fresh IP.
game.
Oh, but
Shadow
he
of
literally.
Mordor is a fresh
Oh my
IP,
gosh.
and these are both great games. But I do understand what he means, is that there's not enough
Okay, Cole.
new.
This was my biggest gripe with his argument, and I think this is part of the
Mm,
takeaway. He complained about Destiny as a new IP because it was going to be available on both the PS3 and Xbox 360 as well as the next gen console. He basically wrote it off because it was going to be available on those consoles as well, and I think that was a failure as a video game journalist
yeah,
because regardless of whether they worked some crazy techno wizardry to get it to be backwards compatible, that doesn't take away that it's a fresh IP and that
yeah.
most people are playing it on next gen. Oh,
No, and
I don't know.
I
That was
totally
a
agree
shot in
with
the dark,
that.
but I
And I
think
think
most people are. But
I totally agree, and I don't agree with what he was saying. I was just pointing out the thing about
yeah,
the fresh IP, and I think in this current period for this year, while we still have old gen and next gen, you need to have games that are available on all of them if you want to keep people gaming.
if at
You
all,
know?
I think there's some games that can't really be done without doing the x86 architecture. There's going to be some games that
Yeah.
are too hard to port, and
And some franchises will have to move on. So, like we talked about in one of our earlier podcasts, Assassin's Creed Unity is on next gen,
Mhm.
but what they've done to satiate fans who still have current gen or old gen, whatever you want to call it, is come out with a whole new other game, AC Rogue,
Yeah.
and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Although
Because it means someone like me who can't play Unity the minute it comes out could possibly go and play Rogue instead, and
you
at
know what's
least
going to happen though. This is one place I would say there's a potential money grab. I can't imagine that Rogue is going to stay on old gen, on previous gen. I don't think it's going to happen.
I think they'll remaster it
Oh,
for next
I
gen.
absolutely think that they're already working side by side with a remaster already.
Mhm.
But see, the thing is, the question
Well, maybe
is
they
how
will.
much is that? How much is that side by side? Going to cost, take away, resource, whatnot. But I 100% think they're already going to be releasing it. Stop dying, Cole.
Well, that's okay too. I don't care. I'm just happy that I can't play the next version of AC, but
Right.
I can play this version of AC if I wanted to. So
Okay.
I don't get left behind necessarily.
Well, Cola, do you have any shout outs as we end the sixth edition of the Adventure Society report?
Hi, Bladesy.
Blazy. Blazy is my youngest mod, but one of the most ambitiously awesome. He has been incredibly helpful, so I definitely second that shout out. Um, let's see, anyone else? Crimson was in here earlier, like I said, part of Guardian One Network. They do a pretty much straight
Warlock
up
of Benz.
do well. There's no Crimson Warlock. Warlock of Benz is actually my newest mod. I'm really glad to see him around for our sixth podcast, so that's cool. Basically, a shout out to my mods because I love my mods.
More time.
Yeah, exactly. Some notes for gaming. I'm actually streaming wise. I'm gonna be gone this weekend, so I will not be streaming because I'm
Oh,
not taking the PS4. So I mean, I may record some Let's Plays and finally get around to relaunching the series of Let's Plays.
oh,
Um,
okay, that'd be cool.
I would love to, and I hope that all goes well. I had some recording issues before, but OBS software has had some updates recently, and think I think I'm going to be able to get that done. Um,
Cool.
so that's probably going to go on for Friday night, Saturday, and I'll be back on Sunday streaming again. Um, and then as far as that, if I can, I'm supposed to be having a friend come over and do a live stream with me on Diablo, and hopefully I'll be getting that done this week. And so hopefully this week I'll have a day of Diablo. But right now, I've just completed the raid on hard mode twice and got rewarded of that. I have End tier gun Vex Mythoclast. Um, Almost fully raid gear, so progression in Destiny is real. That's a deal. I'd be more than happy to, as you know, I'm getting some. I had to change my policy on streaming and adding people to the friends list. So I know I have some people that have been seeing regular, and I'm waiting for those to get onto the friends list so that we can knock out some strikes and stuff together. So that's kind of my upcoming schedule is some more Destiny
Or
with a chance of with a chance of Diablo 3. So, yeah.
cool. I'll just be
Mhm.
playing Dragon Age.
Yeah, you'll be over there playing Dragon Age.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing Return to Ostgar right now. It's very important.
Okay.
Get Kincaid's armor.
Well, I think that concludes this broadcast, and I think that's a wrap.